Quarantine Spook Show. I'm Kyle Kerezsi. If you're listening to this recording around the time of its release, it should go without saying that if you're participating in any of the protests, stay safe and do your part, because they're not always mutually exclusive. This episode of Spook Show is going to be a little different. I'll get more into that after the first story, but for now I'm just going to get right into it. This first story is called Roland's Quest for Hand Sanitizer. It was the first week that COVID had their first recorded diagnosis in America, in California specifically. It was the week that grocery stores were swarmed. People didn't quite understand the nature of the virus. And between you and this storyteller, people still don't. But this was the first wave of disarray. And people just went into panic hoarding, buying off all the toilet paper, all the gloves, all the face masks, all the medical supplies, all the rubbing alcohol. And most famously, all of the hand sanitizer. Now, Roland wasn't someone who often went into hysterics when he went shopping. He always kept a cool head, even if he was doing personal shopping of some sort, you know. He would always buy things rationally. Only bought what he needed within those next few weeks to a month. And frankly, he didn't go shopping too often. But during that first wave of hysteria during the coronavirus pandemic that struck 2020, he knew that he had to stock up. Though by participating in the panic shopping, he would also be causing more of the problem as well. So when he went shopping, he told himself to just get enough for him that can last him a little while, and enough to share with people he cared about, because God forbid there's a tumultuous occurrence where people desperately need medic supplies. So when he went shopping, he went to this undisclosed Kroger-based store. You could feel it in the air, all the panic shoppers had. Seeing all the shopping carts, as high as 2 shopping carts. Like almost every shopping cart had their own mountain to it, and that mountain above the shopping cart was the same height of that cart. Roland still had his cart, tried to keep his shopping modest, though he did stock up, nothing beyond his means. And he didn't go for the products that people tended to go for. He didn't go for any of the pastas, none of the peanut butter jellies or white breads. He avoided all the products that people went for when they didn't know how to cook, which were all out anyway. Hot dogs, you name it. I'm sure you can think of what other items would be on that list. But he just went for a lot of things he'd usually get. He was already stocked up well in the house as it was. He ate sustainably, ate healthy. But the one thing he did need from this undisclosed Kroger location was hand sanitizer. You see, this was trying to think of alternatives of what he could do if he couldn't find hand sanitizer or rubbing alcohol. And that was when he encountered someone in a mysterious trench coat and a rainstorm hat for some reason. And he crept really close to Roland and he said, "You're looking for hand sanitizer, aren't you?" And Roland said, Yeah, I am, but who isn't really?" The guy in the raincoat laughed. And he said, "I can get you some hand sanitizer, but it'll come at a price." And Roland said, a bit impatient at this point, "Well, what doesn't, really?" Storms off, disappearing into the crowd. So Roland goes through the rest of his shopping trip, buying a lot less than he was expecting to buy. And he had to take moments to deliberately not get caught in the hysteria of the panic buying, only getting what he needed. So when he got back, he put all of his stuff away, all of his groceries and whatnot, put his tote bags in the closet, and cooked himself a nice meal, from some chicken he already had in the fridge. And then by the end of the night, he started to wash his hands. But then he got to thinking of using the hand sanitizer. never got around to using it. It just sat on his counter for another week, another 2 weeks. And he thought, based on the way he lived and whatnot, he didn't quite need the hand sanitizer. He thought, maybe I can, bring it to go when I travel to places. But even then, there was always a place to wash his hands nearby for the places he did travel. And then April 2020 rolled around and he still didn't catch the virus. Maybe there's a lot of stock over hand sanitizer, maybe I don't actually need as much as I thought I did. But he still carried it with him, when he would leave the house and whatnot. At one point he opened it and smelled it, and it just kind of smelled like vinegar and lemon. And he thought, surely this couldn't even be any real hand sanitizer. So out of a curiosity, he opened the bottle and just poured it on the table at his house. And then he poured it on the table and it just started to erode the wood to eat right through it. God. This will burn right through my hands if I actually applied it. So he went on throwing the hand sanitizer out in a responsible way so that it wouldn't eat through any trash bag or anything of that sort. This is essentially acid at this point. So then another couple weeks go by and he goes shopping once again. And this time he noticed that the hysteria died down. Even though the quarantine at the time was still active. People weren't panic buying, and people just buried that there was a potentially fatal pandemic happening. But then he looked around at all the other customers and the staff, and took note of their skin, and saw that it was all eroding. Everyone had these sores, eating mostly at their hands, but sometimes their face and also their arms, their neck, wherever the skin was visible. The most common places where the skin would be eaten out would be high contact places, hands, face, things of that sort. So I kind of thought, people couldn't find hand sanitizer, but were desperate for it. They must have gone with the type of hand sanitizer that just erodes at their skin and face in the way that I've encountered. went back the next week, and it was the same thing but worse. And it was like every week he would go do his shopping. It would be like people's skin were eroding right in front of him. So then one day he goes to the pharmaceutical section of this Kroger store and encounters the man in the trench coat once again with the rainstorm hat. And he confronts him about the hand sanitizer. And he said, "Hey, you gave me sanitizer. That wasn't sanitizer at all. It was some sort of acid that would have just eaten right through my hands. Cut down to the bone. It's more deadly than the virus." He started to explain, well, not that it's any concern, but I used to work at Kroger, and I would sell an extra reserve of hand sanitizer that wasn't actually sanitizer. It's a dangerous substance that you mentioned. But you would sell it to people panicking about the virus, and it would eat at their skin, but they would buy it regardless. Said, "That's goddamn awful. You guys are monsters for doing such a thing, for pivoting people's needs against them." And the guy in a trench coat said, "Well, yeah, that's why I quit. It was awful." But Roland said, "But you still participated, though." Roland just kind of left him and went around the store and to try to plead to people to stop shopping at this location so they wouldn't get a malicious hand sanitizer that would eat away at them while they tried to protect themselves. So then he just went home and just washed his hands and went to sleep, and the next week he woke up and went shopping once again at a different location. And there was usual hand sanitizer there, but for how long? Now, I did mention this would be like a quote-unquote special episode, but I think this week I'm going to scrap it, only because it's a bit more somber, this episode. What I had in store it's not quite fitting the vibe. Okay. So probably the next week or the following week, I'll do like the new thing I was going to try. But in this case, I'm just going to ride with this because I think this is the more important thing to ride, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Alright, this next story is called Did you write this one? Is it Peace and Quick? This might be one of these.
That's a Z. Peace and quiet.
Peace and Quiet. Alright. This next story is called Peace and Quiet. Victor took a lot of time to relax at the sauna that he built in his native country of Finland. He built it himself last summer, right in his backyard, or a quick drive from his backyard, rather. Afternoon, he would drive up to the sauna just alongside the shore. And then take the time to prep it, retrieving the water, getting the firewood, heating it up, lighting it. And then he'd spend almost every sunset just relaxing, watching the sun go down, listening to either talk radio or something like that. Or some sort of keen horror program that he was into. It was hard for him not to get spooked, because the sauna's location was so desolate and isolated. So one day he's prepping his sauna, listening to the radio. And he's just relaxing, you know, feeling the heat against his skin, watching the sun go down. And he hears on the radio about invasion of an alien species that came to Earth. And Victor thought, oh no, this isn't a War of the Worlds, is it? Because I fell for that before. No, it was they appeared on all continents and were at war with the humans. And he kind of just waved his hand and just dismissed it as fiction. And then shut off the radio. sauna in peace and quiet. So the next day he does the same thing, drives up to the sauna, preps it, and then turns on the radio. But when he turns on the radio, all he hears is white noise and static. And he was someone who wasn't against using a white noise machine before he slept or something of the sort. But he thought, there's always some sort of talk radio going on, you know, or like some music or something. But he switched to all the radio stations, and they all had vacant signals of empty studios, of ambient sounds. Every channel had a new iteration of static. So on this night he said, fine, I guess I'll just listen to the white noise. So he would just sit and listen to it. The iterations of static that seemed almost in sync with the rhythm of his own thoughts. And he would just like watch the sun steadily go down, hide behind the clouds. Watch the lighting in the sky transform into all the violets and oranges that he never missed. But as he continued to listen to the white noise radio, he heard some more buzzing in the background. Some vague voices buried beneath the static. And he thought, maybe there's a talk radio station or something. So he tried to turn the dial and try to tune in to what the voices were saying. So eventually he turned the dial to a signal where he could hear the voices as clearly as he could, but it was still very grainy, very buried. And it didn't sound like any sort of broadcast that he heard. It sounded more like a conversation. One that was not spoken in a way to be eavesdropped on or to be broadcasted. Try to listen to what they were saying, but they were speaking in a way that he couldn't decipher. And it wasn't really human from what he could tell. And he tried to turn the volume up to get a much clearer image of it. He turned it up higher and higher so the chatter could be more distinct. He leaned his ear closer to it, really trying to piece together what they were saying. And then the signal cut off. And they flipped through all the channels, and there was no white noise to be found at all. And then he turned around and realized that the batteries were dead. And he thought, freaked myself out there for a second. But then he remembered that he might have had some more batteries at his car. Enjoyed his sauna and the sunset amongst the peace and quiet and just the sounds of nature around him and the ocean. So on this third day, he started off prepping the sauna in his usual way, but he had an inkling in himself that said, you know what, this preparation of the sauna is going to be the bee's knees. I want this to be the best sauna session I've had in a while. So he got some firewood and sorted it in a way that he thought would burn really nice. Got some extra water, had some beer with him. He didn't have a radio with him. He thought, instead of being interrupted by the need of wanting to listen to something and then having to deal with peace and quiet, I'm just going to start with the peace and quiet from the get-go. That's what he does. He sets up the sauna and has just enough time for him to enjoy the sunset. And then he heard a loud knocking on the door of the sauna. No idea who it could possibly be. He doesn't know a lot of people who know about his secret sauna location. So he just puts on a towel and then answers the door. And then he sees another man frantic. His clothes are all torn and bloody. And then he asks point blank, "Are you a survivor?" And then Victor asks, "A survivor? A survivor of what?" "Well, the invasion. They came and they wiped everything out. It's like when you eat cheese fries and you eat all the cheese in the fries and you just have a bunch of French fry bits buried in the cheese. That's where civilization is at right now." So Victor said, "Oh, I had no idea, you know." And the man said, "Had no idea?" And Victor said, "Well, yeah, you know, I've been out here remote and whatnot, you know, the radio copped out, you know. I just thought it was a coincidence or something." And the man said, "No, the Earth is virtually destroyed." And then the man said, "You can come with me if you'd like. I think I heard about a shelter further up north." Taking in people who survived the attack, and then we're going to figure out what to do next. And then Victor said, "Oh no, I'm going to enjoy the rest of my time in the sauna." man said, "What? But the invasion might come back, you know? You might be incinerated." And then Victor said, "Yeah, but I think I really got this sauna just right, and I don't want to miss it for anything." So the man just looked at him dumbfounded, and then just headed off the trail and headed north. So Victor closed the wooden door for the sauna, and then went back to his seat and took off his towel. And just watched the sunset from his vantage point. And he thought to himself, an apocalypse. And as he said this, he saw the sky light up, the water boil. A grand light from an explosion, blending with the sun, outshining it as the sun set. Bursts of them past the horizon of the ocean. And then Victor just watched. And then he said to himself again, an apocalypse. I never thought I'd live to see that. Alright, this next story is called Caligula, the Little Alligator with a Very Large Mouth. It was the cutest fucking thing they've ever seen. Caligula, the little alligator. Benny and Donnie went to Florida, to the Everglades, to see a bunch of alligators in their habitat. Or they were crocodiles, they never could quite get the difference straight. But in this case, they were alligators. Or that's what they called them. They were on a boat. They were into all kinds of animals, you know, alligators, goats, spiders, you name it. But they really thought alligators were super fucking cute. Boy howdy. They took a lot of pictures with them, some selfies. And also just admired the pure beauty of these majestic creatures. So then Benny and Donnie continue with their Everglades tour, and then go back to their hotel in Fort Lauderdale. they were gonna play out the rest of their vacation, just hanging out on the beach at the resort they were staying at. Benny's just like, oh, those alligators were so fucking cute. And Donnie was just like, oh, and he pulled out a little tiny alligator hanging out in the backpack. And then Benny's just like, Donnie, what the fuck? And then, you know, Donnie's just like, what? And Benny's just like, you can't just take a baby alligator from the Everglades. Or a crocodile, you know, one of the two. Fucks up with the environment and leaves us with an alligator to take care of. And then Donnie said, yeah, but we can do that though. And then Benny said, how are you even going to take it on the plane, you know? And then Donnie said, alright, well, can we just like hang on to it, you know, hang out with the alligator? And then when we leave Fort Lauderdale in Florida, we can just, you know, return the alligator back to its natural habitat. Let's just hang out with the alligator for just a couple more days, tops. And then Benny reluctantly said, alright, fine. And then Donnie got really excited and started to fill up their bathtub so that the alligator can just like hang out and swim in there. And then Donnie, still super excited, said, what should we call the little alligator? What should we call this little alligator friend? And then Benny says, how about Caligula? And then Donnie's like, yeah, Caligula, our little alligator friend, hanging out in our bathtub on this Fort Lauderdale vacation. Even though they discussed that they would go hanging out at the beaches during the rest of their vacation, they actually spent that entire next day hanging out with Caligula, the little alligator. Just like in the bathtub and whatnot, you know, splashing around. Sometimes Caligula would just give like little playful bites and whatnot. They were just like, oh, it's so adorable. Little alligator friend. It was also fun to just watch Caligula be an alligator just in itself. They've had dogs and cats, but never an alligator. They got a glimpse into an alligator's natural state of being. So during that day, when Donnie and Benny are hanging out in the bathroom, splashing around with Caligula in the bathtub, Donnie leaves to go to the bathroom because he felt insecure about it doing it in front of their little baby alligator friend. So then it's just Benny and Caligula alone in the bathtub together. Benny says, oh, you know, Donnie was right. You are a really totally fucking cute alligator. And then Caligula turns to Benny and says, you know, Donnie stole money out of your wallet when you weren't looking. And then Benny's just like, what? And then Caligula says, yeah, go check. So Benny goes to his wallet, and he checks it, and there's $30 less than when he checked it previously. The two things he couldn't fathom was how Caligula the alligator was talking, and how Caligula would know that Donnie stole money out of Benny's wallet. So then Donnie returned. And then he says, oh yeah, good old Caligula, very cute and whatnot. And then Benny said, Donnie, did you take money out of my wallet? And then Donnie said, what? And then Benny said, did you? Donnie said, no, I didn't take anything. And then Benny said, well, I saw that $30 were missing out of my wallet. Did you take it? And then Donnie relinquished and said, alright, fine, I just got some snacks. And then Benny said, sub-snack? So they spend more time, playing in the bathtub with Caligula, splashing around. Caligula seems to be having a good time, a better time than before he allegedly talked to Benny. So then, later in the night, Donnie gets up and goes to have a cigarette on the balcony. Then Benny's slashing around with Caligula, a bit more skeptical this time. Wondering how he imagined that Caligula the alligator was talking. And then Caligula turns to Benny once again, and he says, Donnie wasn't going to the bathroom earlier. He was on the phone with stockbrokers as a part of a scheme to siphon money out of non-profits as an embezzlement thing. And then Benny's just like, what the fuck? And then Donnie returns. And then Benny says, Donnie, Caligula said you're participating in an embezzlement scheme? And then Donnie said, I was gone for 5 minutes. How could that possibly happen? So then Benny said, well, Caligula was right about you taking money out of my wallet. And then Donnie says, whoa, you're gonna... What? The alligator's talking. There's a lot of things happening at once here. And then Benny said, yeah. Caligula told me everything. That you took money from my wallet, and that you took money from non-profits. And then Donnie said, this is getting a bit ridiculous. I think we should return Caligula, or the alligator, back to the Everglades, because you're starting to lose him a little bit. And then Benny said, no, I'm not losing it at all. And then Caligula turned to Donnie and said, it was Benny that ate your Valentine's Day chocolates. It wasn't squirrels like he told you. And then Donnie said, Benny, what the hell? And then Benny said, look, I was really hungry, and I thought, I'd get really pissed if you knew that I ate your chocolate for your mother. So I blamed it on squirrels. I'm sorry. And then Donnie said, well, we're talking about trust, you know, I need to trust you too, without the alligator. So they leave the bathroom and lock the door. And they're just like, how does this alligator know all these personal secrets? And then Donnie just says, I don't know, but we gotta get rid of them. We gotta put him back to the Everglades. You know, he has a very big mouth. And then, you know, it's like agreed. And then Donnie said, but you know, now Caligula knows that we're onto him. So it might be more difficult to put him in a bag and take him back to the Everglades. And then Benny said, well, we gotta try. Benny said, well, you caught him last time. How about you grab the bag? I'll open the door. And then we'll try to, like, break in and figure something out. I'll try to wrangle him and help you shove him in the bag, but you have the bag steady, you know, when I go after him. So they get ready. Benny puts on some gloves that they have, some gardening gloves. Donnie has his bag. And he says, alright, ready. So they open the door. And then they find the bathroom to be empty. And the air vent lid being removed, torn out, along with a lot of other scratch marks and bite marks around the room. Like, shit, we gotta find this alligator. But we gotta call the front desk or someone, let someone know. And then they hear some screams on the floor below them in the lobby. So they go downstairs and see Caligula roaming around. A couple of people, staff members of the hotel, were trying to catch him, but Caligula's too fast. Donnie tries to approach him with the bag, and Benny tries to grab him with the gloves, just like their original plan. And after a lot of trial and error, after going to the main lobby check-in area, to the dining area, and then back again to the bar area as well, Donnie finally grabs the alligator and then shoves it in the bag. They seal the bag and then just leave the hotel very quickly. They get a taxi to the Everglades. Try to get as close to the area of the Everglades as they could. Eventually they find a swamp area close to where they were going on tour. Donnie's holding the bag full of Caligula. And then Donnie unhinges the bag and then lets Caligula go. Swims around, and then Benny's just just like, alright, it's finally over. We finally got rid of this alligator. And then Caligula swims back around and then looks up at Benny and Donnie and says, "Oh, you two don't love each other anyway." And then Caligula swims off. And then Benny and Donnie just look at each other coldly and then don't say anything. Yeah, when I go dark, I go dark. I was just like, is this ending too dark? But yeah. Alright. Alright. This last story is called The Bubblegum Vampire. Time I went to Wawa or something like that, I'd always get vampire bubblegum because I really liked the mascot on it. It wasn't like Ronald McDonald, that mysterious clown. No, the bubblegum vampire was a mascot you could trust. Not like that purple McDonald's guy that did a commercial with Donald Trump. No, Bubblegum Vampire was much more grassroots. Always participated in local events and whatnot. Always trying to help out the community. And I thought, Bubblegum Vampire is, I want to be like that when I grow up. But then I heard when Bubblegum Vampire was appearing at my local Wawa, I was extremely excited. Because boy howdy, I loved Bubblegum Vampire. So, this was, in 1988. There was a crowd around the Wawa waiting for Bubblegum Vampire to show up. And I stood there with, my sign that said, "I love you, Bubblegum Vampire." Very stoked about the endeavor. My sign, and then a car came and Bubblegum Vampire in full costume came out, and the crowd was screaming, but he had to have a conversation with some executives first, both with the Bubblegum Company and the local Wawa manager. And then after their conversation, which reflecting on it as an adult, I assumed it had to do with pay or whatnot, or how long he had to spend doing his appearance. bubblegum vampire just, Then he presented himself to the crowd, and everyone freaked out. I did the most. I shook my I love you bubblegum vampire sign sporadically. I started to toss out bubblegum to the kids, handing them out, even giving some autographs. He even signed my bubblegum vampire comic book, which, reflecting on it, was just a signature by a mascot, probably diminishing its value if I was someone who would sell my comics, which I usually don't do. So then, of course, as he would usually do, he ate some vampire bubblegum in front of everyone, just to show, yes, vampire bubblegum is very good. Please enjoy it. And then, without saying much else, he just went in the car and left. So then as the years went by, now this wasn't the same bubblegum vampire that came to my hometown, but the one that would be on television, the paid actor who would sponsor those events. It came out that he was a cannibal, and he would eat bubblegum so he would stay away from human flesh. He said that vampire bubblegum was the only thing that can keep his mind off of eating the delicious human flesh and blood. And that's why he became the bubblegum vampire, so that he could have as much of a supply as he wanted and didn't have to cave to his visceral urges of devouring human flesh and blood. And when the news came out, some childhood friends would joke, it's like he's a literal bubblegum vampire. And then I'd say, you leave him alone. I'd get very emotional about it, because I still had my vampire bubblegum from that day long ago. So with Bubblegum Vampire, the actor who would be in those television commercials, he started a rehabilitation program about how not to be a cannibal. It wasn't rocket science to most people, but he appealed to a demographic where human flesh was very delicious, and he tried to come up with a kind of an AA type of program for it. Just like, hey, if you desire human flesh, here's a hotline you can call, here's some help you can seek out. I went to his house and he greeted me. I told him I was just like a fan with some questions. And he said, okay, fine. He was used to people bringing up cannibalism and whatnot. Since he was an advocate against it, he could use all the press that he could, basically. his office somewhere, full of papers on his desk and all that. And I said, yeah, you were a big influence on me, you know. The way you participated in like grassroots things and whatnot, you know, I really looked up to you. And then the bubblegum vampire, you know, being very old at this point, said, thanks, kid, thanks. And then I said, actually, that's why I wanted to give you something. So I reached into my pocket and I give him the vampire bubblegum that one mascot gave me all those years ago. It is worth noting that since vampire bubblegum was long out of business, they haven't manufactured any bubblegum in years. This was a rarity, a prized collector's item for any bubblegum enthusiasts out there. Bubblegum vampire said, oh wow, I haven't seen this in ages. Haven't seen anything like it, really. And I said, oh well, you know, I just wanted to give it to you because just as a token of how much you meant to me, and in case you have any sort of like cannibalistic urges or whatnot, I thought I'd give this to you as a way, as like a last resort of a way to resist caving into those urges, because I heard that you chewed on that bubblegum. Just as a way to resist them. So this is my way of giving back, I suppose, for all that you've given me. And then the bubblegum vampire nodded. He held the vampire bubblegum in his hand. He tears up a little bit from the sentimentality of our exchange. And then he says, oh, you know, holding the scum again, it really brings it all back. And I say, yeah, I'm sure it does. And he says, no, I mean, the hunger. It brings the hunger back for me. And I say, well, haha, you know, trying to pass it off as a joke. I say, well, you know, you could just chew the gum if you're that hungry, you know. And then he said, you know, kid, this is just a very old withered gum. The flavor won't be retained in this vampire gum. No, I need flesh and blood to satiate these urges. Because I don't want to go through the pain of going another second without someone's blood oozing down my throat, getting soaked in between my gums, using my teeth to bite into that juicy flesh, that vampire bubblegum quality of delicious flesh juice. And I say, well, you know, I better get going, you know. I have a lot of stuff to do. I'm just gonna head out. I'm gonna leave you to your nostalgia and your memory. And eventually he pins me down. And then he suffocates me until I pass out. And then I wake up in his house, chained down in his kitchen. He has a bunch of kitchenware set up, a bunch of cooking supplies. I didn't know why I was still alive, why it didn't just gut me then. So then he's just, you know, setting up the sides, really prepping everything except for the main course, which was me in this moment. So as he's prepping, he sees me wake up. He says in a very meek voice, "I need you to talk me out of it." And I say, "What?" And he says, I don't wanna do this. You have to plead to me. You have to do something to prevent me from doing this. Hurry." So without really thinking, I just start to recite the vampire bubblegum commercial, talking about the succulence of chewing on it. But that doesn't do anything. Then I try to talk about the advocacy programs that he started, about how not to be a cannibal, and try to recite his own rules to him. But then that doesn't do the trick either. So then as a last-ditch effort, I just say, I talk about how much of an influence he's been on me, bettering my life, reading his, his habits and whatnot. And then he, starts to simmer down a little bit. And then, he says, "Okay, I'll let you go. Since I was such a big influence on you, and I would always watch those commercials with you in them talking about vampire bubblegum, you were so persuasive about the deliciousness of the bubblegum. But it only took me until now that you're really using your persuasive powers for human flesh. When you talk about the juicy succulence of vampire bubblegum, I would have it myself, and I was just like, it's okay and all. But now I realize that it was for human flesh this whole time." And then the bubblegum vampire says, "Well, what are you saying?" And then I say, I was being truthful when I said I looked up to you. I looked up the way you lived, and I tried to emulate that to my own standards, including your taste for human flesh. And who could be more delicious than the bubblegum vampire?" And then I devoured him that night, and it was the most delicious thing I've ever eaten. Yeah, that one took some turns, but I was certainly into it. Oh man. I've been drinking due to the state of things. But anyway, I'm Kyle Kerezsi, and this has been Quarantine Spook Show. Good night.